All righty, good afternoon, everybody. Today we have session number 3, which is the introduction to the red team perspective. So we're going to take a look at a few different tools, primarily Kali Linux, and then we're going to work through a few of the TryHackMe platform rooms. So those are just kind of different exercises that test people on different domains. They primarily, for a while, were primarily based on some red team pen testing activities, but lately they've done a really good job of adding in a whole bunch of different blue team SOC analyst type rooms and learning pathways. So they've done a really amazing job. There's a lot of really awesome tools and techniques that they teach you on there, and it's a really great place to start if you're just getting introduced to the world of cybersecurity. So at least for today, we'll be looking at some of those tools and then working a little bit with some of the TryHackMe stuff. At least in terms of kind of what's going on in terms of the bootcamp. After today, we'll be a little bit over halfway through the overall series. So I hope you all are enjoying the series so far. Up until now, we took a look at the environment and the command line that we're working with through the bootcamp. We looked at how to set up a very basic static IP-based network infrastructure with an Ubuntu, CentOS, and Debian machine. And then we looked at how we could turn on and set up a few different services and systems. So we took a look at remotely connecting into a system using SSH. We set up a domain name server so that we could resolve to other devices within the network. So in this case, what we were taking a look at was we had a website. So we called that web.bootcamp.ilcyberhawks.com. And then we had a workstation, which is for our SSH and FTP server. And that one had to deal with work.bootcamp.ilcyberhawks.com. So we'd set that infrastructure up. That's something that is very similar to what you would be asked to do during something like the NCAE Cyber Games. So as part of one of the very first things that you'll do during the day is that you'll assign different students or different team members that they're going to be, okay, you're going to set up the SSH server. You're going to make sure that only these specific users are allowed to log in. If they have a specific public key, private key pair, you're going to make sure that those are set up in their authorized key files. Then you'll make sure that the DNS server is set up. In our case, we went ahead and we used the default configuration files. So we had the etc/bind/zone/db dot, and then the actual domain that we were taking a look at. In our case, we used the base configuration files that were there. In some competitions, if you were to copy those and use those, they're just kind of incorrectly made. So you want to at least take a look at the form that we used in ours, and you can pretty easily recreate that within the competition time. And then finally, we just turned on a simple HTTP server that we were then able to resolve to based on that DNS server. Today, we've got introduction to the red team perspective. And then on tomorrow, we're going to be taking a look at firewalls. So some of the stuff that we're going to be using today, some of the scanning tools, we're going to take a look at tomorrow, how we can change the output from the red team perspective. So we can lessen the number of things that might be viewable to the red team when they're taking a look at and scanning your infrastructure. Then next week, we're going to take a look at hardening and then incident response as well. So that's kind of what's coming up. Now, before we do get in here, I do want to kind of make a few notes. Whenever you conduct any kind of attack against a computer system, there's always going to be implied legal risk associated with this. So always, if you're ever using any of these tools, make sure that you develop and communicate a pen test plan. For this case, with something like TryHackMe or Hack the Box, based on kind of the fact that you're using their services, it's designed to be attacked. You're using their VPN in order to connect and log in and do things. The tool, the reason that it exists is for it to be attacked. So there is a little bit of an implied allowance on that. But anytime that you're doing anything else with any other infrastructure, you always want to make sure that you not only have a plan, that you understand what is in scope and out of scope, but that you also receive signed permission. And always understand also the ramifications of your attacks. So for instance, if you're doing, and I guess just on some of the extremes here, let's say that you're doing some sort of attack or penetration test or a red teaming assignment with, let's say, critical infrastructure like a power plant or something like a hospital, you always want to make sure that that if you were ever to launch an attack, you understand what that is going to happen with that attack. So in some instances, maybe that service is not designed to be hit with like a denial of service attack. And maybe there's a procedure or something going on using that server, and you've just taken it offline based on that attack. So you always want to make sure that you understand, okay, I'm using this type of attack. What is the expected outcome of that attack? How is that going to impact the server? It may give you access, but it may also disable things for regular use. And as a red teamer or as a penetration tester, always understand that you're here to help out the client. You're not here just to kind of wreck everything and leave it just in shambles. You're here to help the client improve their defenses and make sure that things are in a safer state than when you left them. So those are just a few important notes I wanted to make before you do anything. With something like TryHackMe, it's implied, but if you're ever doing anything as a freelancer or is sort of as part of a company and you're doing things like penetration testing or red teaming, always understand that you always need a written signed permission to attack certain things. All right, so I just wanted to give just a general overview of what ethical hacking is. It's important to just kind of make that distinction, and there's a few different things that we can do as ethical hackers as well. So we have our white hat hackers. Hopefully that's what all of us are. So they're any sort of individual that reports flaws or vulnerabilities to the developer, or in some cases that just could be like the network infrastructure manager as well. There's a few different types of ethical hacking activity. So you could do some vulnerability analysis, or in some cases, you could also consider that to be some sort of bug bounty hunting. So you're just kind of looking for vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. So this could just be something either at the surface level, or you're taking a look at some sort of application that you're doing. Next, we have penetration testing, and then this will just be a general exploration and then exploitation of vulnerabilities. So typically this, from what I've heard, or at least kind of what the norm is typically that's about maximum, I'd say about 2 weeks that you have to kind of look through that network. You're checking all the doors, you're checking the locks to make sure, okay, is this door unlocked here? Then if it is unlocked, you're going to go ahead and enter, and you're going to see, okay, from within that room, are there any other unlocked doors that I can go ahead and use? And then finally, we have red teaming. This is probably one of the more involved ones, and this is a team-based exercise. And generally speaking, you're assessing the organizational defense. And so in this one, what you're mainly looking for is, and in this one, you're actually going to try to be as stealthy as you can, because you want to see, okay, if I'm not making as much noise as I may in, say, a penetration test, how is the blue team going to be able to pick up on that? How are they going to be responding to that and kind of stopping you in your tracks? So I just thought that it'd be a good idea just to kind of give an overview of kind of, if you are interested in the red teaming, I know that the primary goal of this boot camp was to give just a defense overview. But if you're ever interested in some of the red teaming stuff, this is also out there for you as well. Some of the stuff in terms of the penetration, I like to think of it in terms of a cycle. So one of the first things that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to do reconnaissance. So you're going to want to figure out, okay, what does my target profile look like? You may do open source intelligence, or OSINT. You may find out some information regarding the company that you're taking a look at. You may find out some stuff about the employees. You may find out what type of software they may run. Then you'll do some enumeration. So you'll take what you learned in your research phase, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to do some research on that information. So you're going to say, okay, I know that maybe they use some form of Apache web server to host their website. Okay, well, what are the vulnerabilities that are associated with that? And you'll kind of compile a list, and you'll have some documentation there as well. And then eventually, ideally, what's going to happen is you'll find one of those vulnerabilities, and you'll say, okay, there's either a working exploit here or something that's relatively easy to pull off. And you're going to go ahead and exploit it. And you're going to see, okay, am I able to, I like to call it landing on the system. And what I like to think of it as landing is, okay, you've made it onto the system. Maybe you have some sort of shell that you're able to access and interact with the target in that way. Then you'll set up some persistence. You want to make sure that you're going to be able to log in again. The most simplest that I could kind of give an example of would be creating a new user account. So creating a new user account, and then you can remote into the system. Clearly, that would be the noisiest, where you've got an instance, okay, I can clearly, if I'm ever keeping track of what users are on the system, if a new user shows up, that'll be pretty loud. But there's other mechanisms that we can use. We can set up some cron jobs or different tasks that we can use to go ahead and automatically either launch our new shell again or set something up for us. And then depending on kind of what we're dealing with, we may pivot. So we may go ahead and say, okay, what other computers are in the network. If we take a look at the infrastructure that we've set up so far as part of the boot camp, we have that router that lives on the edge, and then everything else is internally in the network. So if let's say that they compromise our web server, then they may say, okay, I'm on the web server. What else could I see in the network? They would see the DNS server. They would see the work server. They would see that SSH and FTP server. So they would find other ways in which to compromise those devices that may not be visible when you're looking externally, when you're looking from the outside. And then lastly, after you're done with everything, you want to make sure you clean up, both from a black hat hacker and a white hat hacker. You want to make sure as a white hat hacker that you leave the client as secure as you left it. So you want to make sure that you remove any sort of backdoor or exploit malware or something of that nature. You want to make sure that that's gotten rid of so that somebody couldn't follow you in while you were doing that assessment. And then on the black hat side, obviously, you want to make sure that nobody knew that you were there. So I like to think of it as sort of a cycle. I like to think of it as just a system that we go through as we do this. You can and one of the things that I've kind of learned as I do a lot of some of these TryHackMe assessments or other sorts of red team activity is that you want to make sure that you're getting into that cycle, that you're following things methodologically. You don't want to just spitball and try random things out of the order. You want to kind of keep a steady pace as you're working through things, and that'll mainly help keep it so that you're not frustrated as you're working through things, but that you're moving through things properly. And I have a few slides here that just kind of give a more in-depth description of some of these activities. So again, reconnaissance, you're going to be conducting research. You could be doing, you could do some passive stuff. So this will be stuff that won't necessarily show up in logs. So if you're visiting the website, that would show up, but that would be something that anybody would be doing. A regular user would be doing. Maybe I'll create an account on this site and I'll go ahead and see, okay, what does an authenticated user, what are they able to view? Or I could do some active stuff. So I can do some network scanning. So we could use Nmap, one of the tools that we'll be using today. We could use something like that, and we can take a look at what's going on from that side. We could do some physical penetration testing. So that could be something as simple as having a lock picking set, or doing a stakeout and figuring out, okay, how are people entering in and exiting the building, sorry about that. And then we could, of course, do some social engineering. So those are some things that are some options for active recon. And of course, we can always do some open source intelligence. In terms of our enumeration, so research, and we'll do a little bit of that today while we're going through our stuff. I like to call it landing. So that's gaining access to a machine. So you could be looking at what services and protocols are on those listening ports. But after you actually get out of the machine, you also want to do some enumeration in there as well. So you want to identify what kind of user accounts are on there. Are there any sort of running processes that might be useful? And then, of course, there's an innumerable number of things that you could do when you're actually on the machine. Exploitation, I like to break it down into manual and automated. So I think of manual as something where I have to either look and download something new, and then maybe I have to play around with it a little bit. So one of the things that we'll take a look at today is some of the reverse shells, and it's not too crazy because these are all set up and written for us. We also kind of have to have an understanding of, okay, well, what do I have to do to modify it to make sure that it works properly? But then on the flip side, we have an automated toolkit. So for instance, you could use something like Metasploit, where in some cases you could just use the search function, figure out what there is, and then it'll just kind of run through and automatically get you either a shell, or in some cases gain higher elevated privileges as well. There are some types of shells. So we have what's known as a bind shell. So in this case, the attacker connects to an open port on the victim. And then we have a reverse shell where the victim connects to the attacker. So there's different circumstances in which, and I actually have a graphic here in terms of both of them, in terms of how both of those work. But at least in terms of both of these instances, it really just depends. Sometimes a bind shell will work and a reverse shell won't. So you just kind of have to play around with it and kind of get a feel for it. Typically, it's a little bit rarer. So if you have your firewalls configured properly, if we take a look at that, when we're going to take a look at it on Thursday, typically when you look at a bind shell, since it's an incoming connection request, it's not something that the server actually initiated. Most of the time that will get blocked if the firewall is set up properly. With the reverse shell, sometimes with the way that that's set up, if it's something that the server is initiating on its own, it's making an outbound connection request, sometimes that'll be allowed through the firewall. So that's just as a note there as to why maybe a bind shell or a reverse shell may or may not. Then we have persistence again. So we're going to be retaining access to the machine on startup. We're not really going to focus this as much, but there's all sorts of different techniques and tools that you can use for that. And then, of course, cleanup. So removing any kind of software or configuration that you use. So before we do any of the TryHackMe rooms, I first want to talk a little bit about Kali Linux. So if you want to go ahead and follow along, or if you're interested in following along, within the environment, we're going to go ahead and I would recommend using the external Kali Linux machine. So if you haven't gone through and you haven't set up the SENT router to the point where you're able to communicate with the internet from the internal stuff, you may not be able to access the internet with the internal Kali Linux machine. On Thursday, when we're doing some firewall stuff, we will be using the internal Kali machine to kind of get a different perspective on how everything is functioning. But at least from this point of view, I would highly recommend using the external Kali machine. So if you're planning on following along, now would be a good time to go ahead and set that system up. So I'm going to go ahead and set myself to full screen. Alrighty, fantastic. If you are on our Block A students, the password and username are both Kali. But if you are on our Block B students, unfortunately, I miscopied those or miscloned those. So your username and password are going to be root and then Tor. So that's just as a note there. It'll look slightly differently. Your terminal is still up here, so it should be red, I think. But most of the other tools are going to be the same. So that's just a note that I wanted to make there. So at least in terms of kind of getting you started, go ahead and pull up where we were in the slides. So some of the tools that I at least take a look at is the first one is going to be Nmap, and that's going to be a very basic scanning tool. And this you'd use during your reconnaissance phase. And you'd be using this just to conduct scanning. You're going to be mainly looking for what ports are listening on the target. And so then you can kind of use that further. There's a few different flags that I have here. So we can take a look at specific ports that we want to take a look at. If you do -p-, you'll be looking at all the ports that are available on the machine. If you do a -t, you can set how fast your scan goes for. The main difference there is, so if you do a T of 5, I believe that sets the timeout. I'm not entirely 100% on that. But at the very least, sometimes you may miss things. So I do a T of 4, at least for my recommendation. And then we'll go ahead and you can use either a -SV or -A, and you can go ahead and take a look at what services exist on that machine. You can do a -O. Again, if you use -A, it's the same. But I believe in order to get that operating system identification, I believe you need to use that as the super user. So you need to do a sudo or a sudo in order to get that to work. So that's just as a note here. And here's a sample command. So if I were to go ahead and I were to take a look, the only server that's going to be visible to me right now, and I actually do need to double check on my IP address here. So if I go ahead and double check on my router, so we're going to go ahead and log in as that. So we'll go ahead and root, and then log in as root as well. There we go. And if I do IPA, we set up the ETH1. The ETH1 is going to be that internal, but the external one is going to be here, this ETH0. So in my case, my IP address is this 10.0.10.47. If you're in Block A, I believe that's the server that I'm sitting in. Technically, you'd be able to hit this, but I do recommend checking your own as well in order to just use it on your own stuff. So I did an IP.A here, or IPA, I apologize. And I am able to see that IP address. So I'm actually going to write it down on a notepad here. So I have it on the side here, so I don't have to keep moving back and forth. 10.0.10.47. Alrighty. So there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and pop back over to my Kali Linux machine. So if I just do a regular nmap, so I just say nmap 10.0.10.47, in this case, it's saying that it's not up. So let me just double check my IP address here. Okay, I am given a valid IP address. So let's go ahead and ping it. And let's see. Okay, we do see it. Now, what could be happening here is that this CentOS machine that we set up, since we did use firewall CMD, that it's listening on the external and internal zones, most likely what's happening is it's blocking pings. So if I do an nmap-pn, so capital PN, I'm actually going to full screen this, 10.0.10.47. There we go. Now it's actually going to do it. So that's just as a quick note there. More of your modern Windows systems nowadays, and I'm actually going to pull this over to the left so that if you have my face there, it doesn't block it. But and then I guess on the recording as well. So I'll make sure to use the left hand on the screen as much as possible here. But we see that we actually start to see it starting the nmap scan. I'm going to kill it real quick, and I do want to do the -v. So -v is going to give the verbose option. So it's gonna tell us a lot of information. So in this case, it quickly tells me that there is port 22. In our case, port 22 is going to be SSH. If you don't tell it what ports to look for, it's going to look for the 1,000 most common ports. So if you consider, let's say, the FTP that we used, SSH, DNS, HTTP, all those are going to be things that it's going to go ahead and consider. And those are on those default ports. So 22, 21, 53, 80, 80, 443. Those are what it's going to be taking a look at. Now, if you put it on a separate port number, it may miss it with this basic one. So in this case, it's about 42% done. I'm just going to give you a heads up that we really don't have much going on this server. So the only ones that are going on in the server, and you can always check with a netstat. So if I go ahead and take another look here, netstat, ANTLUP, oh, I believe it's actually SS on this one. There we go. Oops. There we go. And we see that there's only a few things that are open. So in this case, we have 68. 68 is for DHCP. 22 is that SSH server. For whatever reason, CentOS machines nowadays automatically install an SMTP server. I'm not entirely sure why, but that's on port 25. If I were to check my firewall CMD, so if I were to do firewall CMD, list all zone equals external, it'll tell us that the only service that it'll allow is actually SSH. So that's why you don't see that SMTP server externally. So the only one that's going to return back, at least for now, is going to be that SSH on port 22. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to specify specifically port 22 on 10.0.10.47. We'll go ahead and run that, and it did it. So we get some more additional information. And then we see port, state, service, and version. So in this case, we know that it is port 22. It's a TCP port. So if we remember back to what we were taking a look at, it does a three-way handshake. It says that it's open. So obviously we can remotely log into it. It is SSH, and then we get the version number. So we learn that it is open SSH version 7.4, and we learn some additional information. So that's everything that we have here. I believe that if I did sudo nmap-o, and then I did 10.0.10.47, I would then be able to figure out what the operating system was. So that may take a little bit to kind of help it out. Let's see, -pn-p 22, just to kind of speed it up a little bit. We'll leave that for a bit. We'll come back to it. We'll see if it gives, oh, there we go. And it's guessing that it's some sort of Linux. It has a pretty high competence in that, but it's actually not giving me the right one. So it's actually a set machine. And it's just currently, at least it's not giving it, it's giving us a general Linux version. So we're not seeing any sort of CentOS there. It thinks it actually might be some sort of an Android device, which I think is funny, but at least there. So don't always take the OS guess as kind of the rule there. As we can see, it's not correct here. But you can, if you feel it's confident in some cases, you may want to use that. You may want to use that as part of kind of your research and kind of figure out what kind of attacks might work on that target. So that's your Nmap. Those are a few different things that you might want to use with Nmap. We can use what's known as directory busting, and we're going to do this as one of the TryHackMe rooms. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. There are two versions. There's dirbuster, which is GUI based, and I don't think this one's actually installed by default. So you may have to install this. Let's see, dirbuster. In this case, oh no, it is on there. GoBuster, I believe, is the one that's not installed. Yeah, GoBuster is not installed, but you can easily install it with it just by in this case, it's asking if I want to install it. So in this case, I can say yes. It asks for my password. So we'll go ahead and give it, and then it'll go ahead and install it. The main difference is dirbuster is a GUI-based one, and then GoBuster is a command line-based one. So those are just the main two reasons as to maybe why you may want to use one over the other. I personally use GoBuster a lot more. I just a personal preference there, but they both work fairly well. So you don't really have to feel like if you're using one over the other, you're necessarily missing out on anything major. So that's just as a note there. I just kind of want to make that clear. But GoBuster is used. So if you kind of consider any sort of website. So if I go to, in this case, I'm going to use as an example, I'm going to go to iit.edu, right? So if I go to iit.edu, so go to the Illinois Tech webpage. Anytime that you go to like one of these directories here, so let's say I go to news, you'll see that it adds this extension onto that domain. So in this case, www.iit.edu/university news. And so in some cases on different websites, we may add different internal directories that may not have links on the web page. So we see all these lovely, there's videos, there's all sorts of stuff, but we can click on them and it'll take us to another link. It'll take us somewhere else. So if I were to go to academic programs, we go to academics/programs, but there could be something internally. So like there could be like a secret directory, and maybe we have some information on there, or it's something that maybe is a login portal for some sort of internal employee application or use. So that's what GoBuster and dirbuster are going to be used for, is you're going to use them. They have a word list, and the word lists, I believe, are located in, they're going to be in computer file system. So in the main, so if you go root, so you go slash, I believe it is in user, USR. So let's go user, share. I believe they are under word lists. So we got to go all the way down. User share word lists. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Word lists. User share word lists. You can either go into dirb or dirbuster. Either one works. And we just get a list of different directories that we might use. So in this case, if I take a look at the medium one, it's a fairly long one, but we see just a whole bunch of possible extensions, a whole bunch of possible directories that we could use. So in this case, index is a common one. So if we remember back to the website that we created, we had /index.html. That's pretty common one. You could have a downloads folder. There could be /privacy, /image, /home. There could be all sorts, any number of them. And this is just a list of just common ones that they've found. So that's just as a sample there. And this is something that we could use to our advantage if we happen to find like a website out there. So that's just an example there. So that's your, I'm gonna hold off showing this until we actually start using one of the TryHackMe rooms so that we can get a better understanding of kind of how that works. In terms of some research that you can do, so let's say that we found a given port. So with that last one with GoBuster and dirbuster, you'd be focused around typically port 80, so some sort of website there. So that would be GoBuster and dirbuster. It could be some sort of research that you might want to do on that. Or that you may want to do some additional research. So in the instance that we looked at with our SSH server, what that CentOS machine is we can then Google and look up, hey, what are some exploits that we may find with that example? So in this case, we may find, so in this case, we have that SSH server. So if I go ahead and pull back open here and I take a look at my command output, we had a OpenSSH version 7.4. So I can go ahead and copy that. And I'll go back to the web browser. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I can say exploits. And you'll start to get different resources here, and that might be something that you may want to do some research on too, and see if, hey, is that something that we may not want, we may want to use for our research. Other ones that you may want to use is that built in as part of, and we'll kill that. Built in as part of Kali Linux is there's something called Searchsploit. I believe this is just a local version of, if you've ever used ExploitDB, I believe it's just a local version of it, but you can find all sorts of stuff here. So apparently there was something very recently, some sort of Splunk, which we can use for gathering logs and stuff, but we can use Searchsploit on that OpenSSH server. So I can go ahead and open SSH 7.4. We get a few things here. So apparently we have some user enumeration here as well. So there's a few different things we could try. But we get Searchsploit, we give the service or the protocol or whatever that we may want to use in terms of our search, and it goes ahead and it spits out a whole bunch of different exploits that we may want to use. And what's really cool is I'm actually going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to create a temporary directory here. Oops, spelled it wrong. If I do Searchsploit, oops, spelled that wrong, Searchsploit-M, and I grab this number on, oops, my cat is making a surprising appearance. If I go ahead and I copy this, if I go ahead and copy this number here, I can actually download the local version. And this is somewhere, and here we go. User share exploit DB. This is somewhere in the file system already, but I can go ahead and I can just copy this with -m and it'll pull it from there. So if I do an ls real quick here, we have 45939.py, and I can go ahead and take a look at that, and we can go there. So if anybody ever, and I guess here's just as a sample. So we always get this question a lot in terms of, okay, I'm trying to get into cybersecurity. Is there a specific programming language that I should learn? And the answer to that is a little bit vague. And the reason for that is that we use tools that use different languages. So in this case, we have some sort of a Python program. So it's good to understand, okay, there are two general versions of Python that are out there in production. We have Python 2, which is a little bit older, and Python 3, and they run very differently. So for example, one of them uses quotes in their print statements, and the other one doesn't. But that is a very important distinction because you can't run certain Python 2 scripts using Python 3 because of that change. So understanding that difference is very important. And understanding, okay, well, something is spitting out an error at me when I'm trying to run this exploit. Understanding that programming language will help you understand, okay, what was the intent behind the program? So that's why whenever we kind of get that question, we say it really kind of depends on what you're working on. If you're doing penetration testing, it's good to just have kind of your toe in the water on a whole bunch of different programming languages to understand the basic frameworks of it. Python is probably going to be the most common one that you're going to deal with because it's the most, I would say, versatile and kind of user-friendly. But you may run into C programs, C++ programs, Ruby we've seen on occasion. So kind of tip your toe in a few these different programming languages. But that would just be an example here. So we have Searchsploit. We can pull down the example one, and we'll take a look at that when we're doing some of these TryHackMe rooms as well. I have a slide here. So we have something known as a hash. So a hash is just a one-way function that we can use to primarily for integrity checks and for authentication. So it's a one-way function. So if you take, let's say my name, let's say David, and you do the SHA-256 hash on that, you'll get this really long string here. Ideally, it's unique. So in this case, David will, and then nothing else will turn into this, but in reality, there's an infinite number of different things that you can put in. So something else is going to also resolve to this string here. Or if I do an MD5, those are the two most common, SHA-256 and MD5. You may also run into a few things. There's called NTLM hashes within Windows. We're not going to worry about that too much right now. But at least with SHA and MD5, those are probably going to be the two most common that you're going to be using. We can use a tool called hash identifier to figure out what a hash is. And we can use a tool called either Hashcat or John the Ripper to crack these hashes. All you're doing is you're taking a word list of well-known passwords that already have a hash identified for them. And we can actually, kind of similarly to that word list in here, there's the RockU word list. So this is from the RockU breach, and this is just a whole bunch of passwords that they found in here. So these are just common passwords that you can do. And what Hashcat and John the Ripper are going to do is all they're going to do is just calculate the hash on these and compare it to the one that you were given. So if the password is M&M, the Hashcat will generate the hash on M&M, and it will match the hash that you're given. So that's just as an example there. It'll be a little bit hard to, let's see, I can quickly, or I'll try my best to do this as quickly as I can. I don't know how quickly this is going to turn out, but let's see if I find my thing. I'm going to try to copy and paste this, this hash. We'll see how it goes. So there we go. It's a very big file. So that's just as a note there. It's a very, very, very big file. Go ahead and cancel. It looks like it has crashed, so that's always fun. So we'll close that. We'll see if it gives me, I would like my screen back, please. There we go. Okay, it's having some problems here. So let's see. Hopefully it, there we go. So if I go ahead and clear. All righty. Well, that's fun. So let's hopefully this kind of responds back again really quickly. Okay, fantastic. There we go. So I did not expect that to use up so much RAM that it's actually slowing the machine down. So we'll give it a second here to fix itself. So we'll kind of hopefully it gets back in order here. Come on, you can do it. I don't want to have to restart the machine, but we may have to do that. We'll see. We'll see kind of how quickly we get back to normal here. In the meantime, I'll just kind of continue through a few of the slides. Hopefully that fixes itself, and then we're back to normal. So like I said, you may come into a hash. If I were to jump into, let's say, my CentOS machine, oops. If you open up the etc/shadow file, this is the hashes for your machine. And so whenever I log in, what it's doing is it's taking the password that I supply, it calculates the hash of that, and it compares it against the hash that is stored here in the etc/shadow file. It's extremely important that you keep that file secure. So as you can kind of guess, if the file is insecure or anybody can read the files, you can go ahead and grab the hashes. You can run something like Hashcat or John the Ripper, and then you can break in. You'll figure out what the password for the user is, and you'll go from there. So that's just as an example there as to kind of why I had that in the slides. I don't expect any kind of hash cracking to show up during today's session. Yeah, that's totally toast. Okay, I will restart that machine, and then hopefully it's good to go by the time we need to continue doing stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and kill that. So just as a warning there, if you're planning on following along. Oh, are we back? We're back. Oh, fantastic. Okay, it's a good thing I waited, or it's a good thing I gave it a little bit. So, okay, it's still running a little bit slow. Alrighty. Great. Okay, there, we're back. We're back. Hooray. Alrighty. So if I wanted to, I'll pull this back over to the left-hand side here. Now let's go ahead and see if we can copy this. So if I, oh, come on. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to head to my desktop. I'm going to go to my temp folder. This is empty. Oh, and it's got that Python file. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cat this string. I hope that this is proper. 64464E07 AMC 9E 46359 FB4 8083 915 05 956. Oh, there we go. Oh, I gotta, let's see if it did it. It's empty. I should have said echo. I apologize. It's not cat. I meant echo. Apologies for that. Echo. We're going to throw it into hash.txt. So if we go ahead and cat that open, we see the hash. Now, one of the tools that we can use, if you're unsure of what hash you're dealing with, you can use a tool called hash identifier. And we're going to go ahead and paste it in there. And it says it's some sort of MD5 hash. We can go ahead and exit. Oops. I think it controls it. Yeah, controls it. There are two tools that you may want to use. You may either want to use Hashcat or John the Ripper. Hashcat could be a little bit more finicky. John the Ripper actually has a tool that is able to determine what format of hash that they're using. So in some cases, it can be easier. Personally, I find more success with Hashcat. I don't know what it is, but John the Ripper just doesn't like me. And I'll use it the same way as tutorials will tell me to use it, and it will fail. I don't entirely know why. I've had friends who then swear by John the Ripper, and they have problems with Hashcat. I don't know what the deal is, but it is just how it is. Generally speaking, we'll want to use dictionary mode. So you'll have just a dictionary of words that you may want to use. So in this case, the RockU word list. So for instance, as a sample here, we can go ahead and we can run against our Hashcat -A. In this case, -A is the type of hash. In this case, 0 is MD5. Actually, no, actually that's incorrect. A is the actual attack type. So in this case, it's a dictionary attack. -M is the mode or the hash type. I believe 0 is MD5. Yeah, I can help by MD5. Let's see. Oops, grep. I apologize. Grep MD5. And it'll spit out all the different types of MD5 that we may use. And in this case, again, 0 is MD5. So if I do hashcat -A, attack type is dictionary. The hash is an MD5. And then we want the word list and the file. So in this case, we want user share word lists /RockU. And then we want the hash, in this case, hash.txt. It's going to go ahead and start running. In this case, there's some sort of issue with Hashcat. I've never seen this before, so I don't know what's going on with it. Let's see. We'll give it a sec. Huh, that's interesting. Never seen that issue before. Let's see if it actually did it. So if I head back to let's see, give me 1 second. Let's see if it actually cracked it. I don't know what's going on here. Okay, so that did not crack it. Don't know what happened there. I've never seen that issue before. So that may be an issue with this installation of Kali Linux. I've never seen that before, but we can alternatively use John the Ripper. In this case, it'll automatically figure out what it is. In this case, I believe it is saying it is, let's see, it's trying a few different things, and it's going to try and see if it can crack it. In this case, it'll use its own word list here. It has its own user share. John, let's see actually if it has the David user in there. As you can kind of expect, this is fairly intensive. So as you can see here, in terms of my CPU usage, we're at pretty close to 100% here. So let's see, cat, user share, John. Let's see if David is in there. Password.txt. And then we're going to go ahead and grep David. Okay, David's not in there, so this will fail. So we don't want to try that. But let's see. Am I able to give -format -- word list? So we're gonna go ahead and see if we can try -- word list. So John -- word list equals user share word lists RockU, and then we'll do it on hash. So in this case, let's see. There we go. It says that it is done. That does not look like a proper output though. Let's try format. Let's try and tell it again. I always have issues with John. I'm sure someone could probably put in a comments like, oh, David, you're using this incorrectly. You should really be doing this. I'm sure that's the case, but at least in my case, I always prefer to use oops, that was incorrect. I think it's actually raw, MD5 raw or something. Nope. Okay. Yeah. See, I always have problems with this. Let's double check what the, oh, come on. Formats. raw MD5. So it's actually raw MD5. So again, I always have issues with John the Ripper. I don't know why. There we go. So as you can see here, I fixed it. So in this case, if we do John the Ripper, we say format. In this case, it's a raw MD5. Then we give it a word list of user share Rockio and then the hash, and it will crack that and say, okay, the hash initially was David. So there we go. That's how we use that. Alrighty. So those are those two tools. Alternatively, we could just do a brute force attack. So we can say, okay, let's say that we have that SSH server, and I want to try and crack into that. There's typically not as many, unless it's a really old version of SSH. There are not as many ways that we can break in with just an exploit like from Searchploit. But you can always try and brute force in. So we can use something like Hydra, or if it's some sort of website, we can use something like Burp Suite as well. So we'll take a look at that a little bit later. But those are some two different tools we can use. We can use Hydra. So for instance, as our example here, I don't remember. I'll very quickly create a user David. So let's do, oh, I do have David. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to change David's password to David. Oops, let's actually try this. Let's try password. Oops. And as you can see here, the password fails the dictionary check. There are actually tools on different versions of Linux that will actually check it against the dictionary, and it will be like, oh, hey, that's an issue here. You want to make sure that you check it against it. So that's just as a cool thing that some Linux distributions do, is they'll actually go ahead and check it for you against a known common list. So if I were to try Hydra here, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look at what the command should look like. So I can say Hydra -L in terms of the username. So in this case, I want to try it against David. So in this case, you would need to know a list of users that are on the system, or else you'll just kind of checking against nothing. So in this case, we want to do it against RockU 0.10.47 SSH -T. So we'll go ahead and try that. So in this case, it's going to go ahead and try it. It's attacking it. And as we can see here, we actually get a successful response. So in this case, I know that David's password at 10.47 is password. Oops, I got to say yes to the fingerprint. And if I put his password in, we get the correct one. And we actually do see those password attempts. So I'm going to guess that, so if I do head on user share word lists /RockU, it is 1, 2, 3, 4. So as you can see, it went through it. It tried 3 different passwords before that. We failed on all 3. And as we can see, the successful login was on password. So that was just some cool stuff. We'll use Burp Suite in a little bit later. So just hold on for that. The last thing I do want to bring up before I bring up one other tool is how we can transfer files. So one thing that we're always going to want to do is we're going to have some way to move things between different servers. And the quickest way that I have found is to use either an HTTP server or an FTP server. So I think I showed this when I was doing some stuff the other day, but you can always just do Python 3-m http.server and then on port 80. And then if you go ahead and visit yourself, you can actually see, and this works out of the directory that you're currently in. So if I go ahead and start a browser, go ahead and head to myself. So if I go to 127.0.0.1, it comes out here and I can download. This can be useful. Let's say that you need to transfer up some stuff over and you need to get it over to the target. That would be a good way to do it. You can also use FTP as well. I use FTP. Let's say that I need to transfer something from the server, the target to me. I may use an FTP server for that. Alrighty. And then lastly, we have Metasploit. So I mentioned that Metasploit is one of, I consider it an automated tool. So it can give us a lot of options. The way that you start that is you say MSF console. I believe it generates a random ASCII art figure every time that you run it. But this is just a sample here. And sometimes it does take a little while to get started. And there's a whole bunch of tools that you can use for here. And generally speaking, we consider this to be some sort of automated tool. So in this case, I can search open SSH, and it will give you a whole bunch of different exploits that you can use. So in this case here, a common one would be Eternal Blue against Windows machines. And then you can say use for. So in this case, I want to use this one. You'll say use for. It'll go ahead and set the path for you. You can say options to figure out what you need to set. Our host is going to be the target machine. And then L host is going to be you. So make sure that you set that accordingly. I'll talk about it later in terms of what you need to do. So before we get into TryHackMe stuff, I figure we can go ahead and take a little bit of a break. If you don't have a TryHackMe account, I do recommend getting one. It's completely free. So when we come back from the break, we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at that. And we'll go through 2 rooms. I have Vulnversity and LazyAdmin. Hopefully, I believe those are 2 free rooms. So everybody should be able to do it, even if you have a free account. I'll talk through some of the ramifications of using a free account. It's not too bad, but just kind of limits in terms of how long you're able to do certain things on the machines. So we're going to go ahead and take a break on our end, and we'll come back and we will continue along with some of the TryHackMe stuff. Alrighty, so we're back from our break. All right. So at least in terms of kind of what we're doing next is we're going to go ahead and jump into the TryHackMe platform. So with the external Kali Linux machine, since we are able to view the internet, we're actually going to use it directly for our stuff. So if I go ahead and look up TryHackMe, we go ahead and hand that out there. As you can note, you can go ahead and join for free. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and I'm actually going to use my login to go ahead and get that going. And you can actually, after you've created your account, you can actually use it within our own little network here. As we can see, we actually do need to do a CAPTCHA real quick here. I think that should be enough. Oh, it was not enough. So let's see. Should be enough. There we go. So we'll go ahead and log in here. I don't like to save my passwords and things like that. And if we go ahead and just poke around a little bit in terms of kind of what TryHackMe offers, is we can see that there's a few different learning paths that we can do. So if you're completely new to cybersecurity, you can jump into the Introduction to Cybersecurity path, and they'll teach you a whole bunch of different stuff. They've changed it quite a bit over the years, so some things have been added, some things have been removed or moved into other different learning paths. But they talk about, hey, what is offensive security? What is defensive security? If you're interested in a career in cybersecurity, if it's not just a hobby that you enjoy doing, you can go ahead and see kind of what your options are. They talk about a few different things. They talk about web app security, some stuff for digital forensics. So you can go ahead and follow those paths. They have some stuff in the red teaming domain, penetration testing, cyber defense. They've started to do some stuff with AWS, some really cool cloud stuff there. So awesome, really great, awesome materials that you can find here within TryHackMe. You can also search for stuff. So for instance, we're going to be using Vulnversity. So if we go ahead and search for it, you can find it here. So we go ahead and find it. And we have 2 different ways that we can actually access this. So one of the things that we do want to do is we want to deploy the machine. So we're going to want to go ahead and get that going. And in about a minute, it'll go ahead and show us the IP address for the room. Now, before we do that, we actually need to give ourselves our VPN. So let's see, that's actually not what I wanted. Access. So I want to go to access. And then we want to go ahead and download a VPN file. You want to make sure that you're in the US region. So if you're using it from the IIT servers, if you're using one of our virtual environments, you want to make sure that you're using this within the US region. If you're doing this on your own Kali Linux machine, feel free to use whatever region that you're in. If you, one of the issues that we ran into is sometimes people were assigned to the Europe region, and that was actually preventing them from logging in. So that's just as a note there. So now let's go back to the room. We've downloaded the VPN file, and you can use what's known as the attack box. So I'll go ahead and start that up. So we'll start that. We won't use it. We'll go ahead and just use our Kali Linux machines. But it's a virtual web-based Kali Linux machine, very similar to what we're using here for this tutorial set. So if I go back to downloads, in order to activate this, we do sudo open VPN, and then we give the VPN name. It'll go ahead and activate it. in this case, there's some sort of issue here. I forget what the issue is. So give me 1 sec to try and figure out what this issue is. I forget what it was. Give me a sec. Let me Google it. Let me resolve this real quick, everybody, and then we'll get back into it. So, but you can go ahead and download your own VPN file. We may end up just depending on how long this takes, I may just what's it called? I may just use the attack box here. So just know that that is an option. If you're a free user, I believe you're limited in how long you have the attack box for. So give me 1 sec as I take a look at this just to see. Oh, here we go. So I'm going to quickly stop sharing my screen. You'll see here, there's this issue here, this AES 256 CBC to data ciphers. So if I were to cat Darnold at OPN, grep cipher, as you can see here, it's just cipher. You want to change that to -- data ciphers. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen because there is a little bit of private information in, or I'm not entirely sure if there is private information in there, but I don't want to share that, that VPN file. So I'm going to go ahead and edit it. If you have that issue, just go ahead and jump into an editor and then update that to data ciphers. So I will show you the proper grep after I verify that the VPN works. So let's see. Yes, it works. Okay. So I will do the same grep and I will show you what it actually looks like, or what that should then look like after you update it. So I will quickly jump in here and reshare my screen. So if I go ahead and do that grep again, so if I look at that Darnold OpenVPN file and I grep cipher, now it is -- ciphers AES 256 CBC. And I'll know that it works by doing sudo openvpn. And in the top right-hand corner, you don't get to see it. I will do a snipping tool and I'll pull it out for the people who are joining us from YouTube, just in case that that my portrait blocks it. So if I go ahead and pull that out, you'll see that my IP address from in here is going to be 10.6.35.245. So that's just as a note there. We will need that for later. And here's the attack box. Again, it's just another Kali Linux machine. There are some slight differences on where things are located. They've themed this around their advent of cyber. So if I go ahead and I look up advent of cyber, I don't know if it's a room. Let's see, advent of cyber maybe. Here we go. Every year they do what's known as the advent of cyber. It's just a few different fun cybersecurity rooms that they have. They get a whole bunch of different YouTubers and streamers from around the cyberspace that are fairly familiar to everybody. And they have them just do tutorials on how to do a whole bunch of stuff. So as you can see, John Hammond typically does the kickoff for this. I don't know if he did the kickoff for this year, but there's a whole bunch of wonderful little cybersecurity challenges and introductory stuff to kind of get you into cybersecurity. So I just thought I'd bring that up. Because it is a cool thing. So let me see. Let me find it again. Where was I? Vulnversity. So back in Vulnversity. Back in, I spelled it wrong. There we go. Vulnversity. There we go. So we're back in Vulnversity. I'm going to kill my attack box. You're welcome to use the attack box if you'd like. It's fairly similar to what we have set up. But I'll just use our Kali Linux machines. As we see here, we have an IP address now. So one of the first things that we want to do is we want to do some Nmap scanning. So I'm gonna blow this up a little bit. So I'm gonna go to desktop. I'm actually gonna create a Vulnversity, just to kind of keep myself organized. One of the things that at least I tell my students sometimes is you can use a tool called Cherry Tree. So if I pop up Cherry Tree, and I can use that to kind of organize my research. So for instance, this could be called Vulnversity. Go ahead and create that, and I'm going to go ahead and create a node called Nmap scan. And then I'll start to fill things as I go along. So I'm going to go ahead and scan this IP address. So in this case, I'll just copy it. I'm going to assume that at least in this case, that they're just using the most common ports. Normally, I may try -p-, so I may try and scan everything. In this case, I'm just going to assume that it's just on the most common ports, and then I'll just go ahead and paste my IP address. So in this case here, if you're doing this on your own, note this IP address, this guy here will be different. So if you're trying to use yours, make sure that you grab it from here before you try and use the one that I'm using. So as you can see here, we get a few different ports coming back. So we have 445, 21, 22, 139, 333. So I can go ahead and copy this. So I'll go ahead and copy this. I'll throw it into my cherry tree. So we'll leave that there. And we'll let it go ahead and scan. So here we go. I think it's ready to go. Let's see if it's ready. It found 6 services. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this as well. And this is going to tell me all the different services and ports that it was able to identify. So I'll go ahead and copy that. I don't have everything, but I'm pretty sure I have everything that I'll need. So we see here we have 21. So we see that it's some sort of FTP server. We have 22, which is some sort of SSH server. 139 and 445 are associated with each other. It's known as SMB or SAMPO. It's a file service typically for Windows. We have 3128, which is a squid proxy. So there's some sort of proxying going on here. And then we have a website on 3333. So there's a few different ways we can go with this. Let's just kind of go in order. So we'll go ahead and do FTP on port 21. So in this case, we see that it is a VSFTPD 3.0.3. Go ahead and copy that down. And then we can use, let's say, and we actually have to keep this running because that's our open VPN. We'll go ahead and clear this. And let's just use our search exploit. Okay, so we'll do search exploit dash or not M. Search exploit VSFTPD 3.0.3. And we get 1. So apparently there's some sort of remote access that we can get. I'll try and blow this up. I'll run the search again. Okay, so it's a denial of service attack. So that could be useful. It could be something that we could put in our findings, but it's really not something that we would really want to use in this case. It's not going to give us any kind of access to the server. It's not. So if you were really struggling to get any kind of findings, this may be something you might try. But again, it's a denial of service attack. So you're really just going to take it offline. It's really not going to do anything else. So in this case, it's not going to be useful. So I'll say search exploit DOS. So we'll leave that for now. We can try an FTP. We can try to log in anonymous. So FTP anonymous at, I forget what the IP address of the server was. Let's go ahead and see. Go ahead and click here to copy it. Go ahead and copy. Paste. In this case, it lets us connect, but if I try and use the empty password, it will, let's see, it fails. So we would need to know a little bit more in terms of what the username here is. So I'll actually go ahead and copy this. So we'll include this in our findings. So good news is that the FTP server fails with a login. So that's all that we can do for now with that FTP server. Let's go ahead and head back up and let's go ahead and grab our SSH server. So let's go ahead and copy this. We'll create an SSH on port 22, copy and paste, and let's go ahead and use search exploit on that. And paste it. There's a few things you could do. We could do username enumeration. We could do denial of service, but other than that, there's really not too much. And that's pretty common. SSH is fairly robust. There's really not too much there. So if we wanted to, we could try this username enumeration here. If you were to get some older versions, sometimes you will find an exploit that will allow you to get in a non-authenticated way. But in this case, typically there's not going to be too much. So we're actually going to ignore this for now. We could just do some username enumeration, but generally speaking, that's only going to be useful for our Hydra brute force attack. It's not really going to be useful for us in too many other ways. So let's go back. We could try this SMB server. So we could try this SMB. So we could try and do this, the Samba SMBD. It's some version, some 3 version. So we'll just keep this. So keep cup and then do search exploit. And I'll actually add in a node. So I'll do SMB on 139/445. We'll go ahead and keep going here. So we'll do that, SMB. I believe I think it's just Samba. That should get some results. We get a lot here, but since we don't have a specific version here, it's giving us all of Samba. And if we look back at our Nmap results, it's pretty ambiguous here too. So it's some version between 3 and 4. So we could go on kind of a hunt here and try and figure out maybe one of these is going to work. And there's actually quite a few that might work. So as you can see here in 3.5.0, there's some form of remote code execution. So that could give us access to the target. So that could be something that might be useful for us. But at least for here, we're kind of shooting in the dark here. We're not entirely sure what we're dealing with. We could try and connect to it. So if we do SMB clients -L, I'm going to pull up my little cheat sheet here and double check what the command is. But we can try and see if we can remotely connect to it. So if I do SMB client -L, and then I give the IP address, and I keep forgetting what it is. So we'll go ahead and copy it down again. In this case, it's going to ask us for a password. You're going to leave none. We really don't see much. So we see printer devices is really not much. IPC is pretty generic. So right now there's really nothing there. If there were other drives, so for instance, like pictures, or sometimes they call it like some sort of business function, that might be more interesting. So for instance, we can do SMB client, and we can try and connect to one of these two. So we can say 10. There we go, 10.10.59.53. Oops. And I believe it's just like, for instance, IPC $. We give no password. And we're actually here. But in this case, it's having some issues here. Maybe. Yeah, it's having some problems here with connecting to it and using it. So we're not really finding too much with this example. So if I go ahead and enter in, so in this case, it's denied. Yes. So in this case, we're really not getting anything of any kind of value out of this. So I'll go ahead and I'll actually leave this here as my finding within my cherry tree. So go ahead and have an SMB client, and we're good there. We're going to go ahead and skip the squid proxy. Now, there could be something from SearchBoy, but generally speaking, at least for this one, that's not the target for this machine. So we could do squid, and we could put in the actual version number. So in this case, 3.5.12. And we could go ahead and use that. And in this case, there's nothing. We could delete a little bit. So we can say 3.5. We see a denial of service attack. And we go back a little bit more, and we can try and see if there's anything else. There could be some. Oh, no, that's for version 2 of some kind. So in this case, there actually isn't too much from here. So we'll go ahead and move on to that HTTP server. So in this case, there is a website on port 3333. So that is abnormal. So in this case, if we were just looking at port 80, we would have missed it. So if I go ahead and head on out to it, I need to go grab that IP address again. If I go ahead and head on out to it. Oh. Sorry about that. If we go ahead and paste this in here, and we go and look at 3333, we can go ahead and we can find that website. So we go ahead and find the website. In this case, it's obviously the name of the challenge was Vulnversity, some sort of pretend university page. And we can go ahead and we can actually start playing around with it. We can see, okay, maybe is there something that we might want to use here with this. So maybe, and I guess for this one, it's actually fairly incomplete. So if I click on any of these things, it actually doesn't take me anywhere, which I find quite interesting. Cybersecurity. In this case, if I search, it actually doesn't bring me anywhere. So that's kind of an interesting find on that. Yeah, we could try and see if we could create an account. We could do all sorts of different things. But let's go back and let's actually use that dirbuster tool that we looked at earlier. So we'll go ahead and pull open dirbuster. So let's go ahead and pop that open. So let's go ahead and put in the IP address that we had. So in this case, it's 10.10.59.53. Yours will be different again. We want to have a colon and then 3333 for the port. We're going to go ahead and head into user share word lists. And then we want to go to, you can either go to dirb or dirbuster. I'm going to use the small list. And we're going to go ahead and start. So we're going to go ahead and look. It's going to go ahead and find a whole bunch of stuff. It'll come back with errors and a whole bunch of stuff. And we're just going to go ahead and let it keep going here. 20 consecutive errors happened. Let's see. There was some sort of error here with the issue. I think we can go ahead and tell it to continue. Oh, if I just press, if I unpause it, it'll keep going, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, it's going to go ahead and continue for us, and it'll keep finding some stuff. I don't remember and I guess just as a hint, the site that we're looking for is /internal. So let me just actually go ahead and double check to make sure that that's actually included in the word list that we're using here. So if I cat user share word lists, dirbuster, and then we want small, and then we want grep internal. Okay, it is in there, so we know it's in there. I don't know exactly where it is, but we're gonna go ahead and let this run for a little bit, and eventually it will show up. So we'll go ahead and let it go for a little bit here. At least for the moment, there's not too much that we can do. If we wanted to, we can go ahead and check out this HTTPD version. So let's go ahead and pop this open. Let's take a look here. So if I do search exploit, and then I say HTTPD 2.4, there's a few different things. So if I go ahead and pop this back up again, let's see. Remote buffer overflow, that could be useful. There's a path traversal and remote code. So that's actually very useful. I don't remember. Let's see what the full version was. 2.4.18. So I'm wondering if 18 has anything. There's a denial of service attack that could be used, but not that we want to use that. Some more errors. So we'll go ahead and continue letting it go. Sometimes that's just how it is. If you were using GoBuster, I don't think you'd have that same issue. I think it would not have that error. So we keep going here. I don't know if I can get the word count. Let's see. I'm curious how far down that is. Grep internal. I forget how to get the count. Yeah, I guess we're just gonna have to let it go for a little bit longer. And hopefully soon it will find, in this case, it will take a very long time before it finds it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll just say you will find eventually, after letting this run for a while, you will find eventually it will find /intern. So just in an interest of time, we're going to go ahead and actually it'll only take 4 minutes. Let's give it a little bit longer before we completely count it out here. Dash rates /icons. We'll give it a little bit longer before we count it out here. But that is what you're looking for in this case. And you would use something like either GoBuster or dirbuster to find that. I just don't remember off the top of my head what let's see if I can find the GoBuster command just to give you a sample of what that looks like. So give me 1 second here as I find my resource. There we go. So give me 1 sec, and I can show you the GoBuster. I like the GoBuster more. It's kind of up to you which one you may want to use. So if I were to use GoBuster, it looks something like GoBuster, dir for directory busting, user share word lists, dirbuster / we want the small one, and then we give the target, so it's -u HTTP. In this case, I think I still have the IP address here, -3333. Let me go ahead and let it go. So in this case, in my opinion, GoBuster, at least I have found, in my case, GoBuster to be a little bit more reliable here. As you can see, it's moving, I think it moves a lot faster compared to GoBuster, but that could just be me in terms of how I use it. So we can go ahead and let this run for a little bit here. So that's at 2%. This is at, what percentage are you at? And information / fonts. Internal, there we go. So GoBuster actually found it faster. So as you can see here, we have internal. So if I go ahead and head on out there and / internal, we see an upload directory. So this is quite dangerous. So as you can probably guess, if you're able to upload something over to that website, you could potentially use that for evil. And what we're going to use is we're going to use user /share / shells. I believe it's web shells. Here we go, web shells. And we want a PHP shell. In most cases, it's a PHP website. If it's a Windows, I forget what the shell is called. I believe it's an ASP file. So you want to know that. In this case, I want this reverse shell. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up. I'm going to pull it in my Vulnversity file here. Oops. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up there. And we do need to modify it. So the reason we need to modify it is that, and actually I'm going to kill the GoBuster as well. I mean, the DeerBuster as well. And the reason that I need to change it is that the default, I forget what the default is. So if you go to desktop, Vulnversity, the default, I think, is to here. It's just a local address, so it just tries to go to 127. In this case, I need to update it with my own IP address. So I need to change it. In my case, I am 10.60. Oops. Let's try that again. In my case, it is, where's the cursor? There it is. In this case, it is 10.6.35.245. I'm going to leave this port. This port I'm happy with. I'm happy with this port. In this case, in order to listen for this, so NC NVLP, we're going to go ahead and set up a listener on 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's go ahead and upload it. So we're going to go ahead and upload the file. We'll submit it. In this case, this extension is not allowed. And so some people caught on, or at least a lot of website designers, they caught on, okay, people are uploading these PHP reverse shells, and that's really bad because then we'll get access. So one thing that you can do is you can try different extensions of PHP. So PHP extension types. And we can see if they're checking for all of them. So lift PHP extensions and see. We can see here. Let's see. So we have PHP. Let's see. How many PHP extensions are there? That's not correct. I think I'm looking for the wrong search type. But typically, like you may have like PHP 5. PHTML is another one that you can try. So for instance, on this one, we can try and rename this file to, instead of PHP, it is PHP 5. So we can go ahead and try PHP 5, and we can try to re-upload it. The reason it works is it's still a PHP. So in this case, that's still not allowed. So now let's try PHTML. Is that it still executes as a PHP type. But the browser is only checking for that extension. It's only looking for PHP in the title. So as we see here, it's a success. And we can actually detonate this, and typically there's something called like downloads / in this case, we have to remember the type. So let's go to downloads. That's not it. Or uploads, I should say. It's typically in something called uploads. You would need to be able to figure out what that extension is / in this case, PHP reverse shell.phtml. Let's see, reverse shell, how do they spell it? No. We're going to keep trying a few different things. And eventually we're going to figure it out. There we go. So as you can see, so it was in internal / uploads. And as you can see, we're hanging here. And that's typically a good sign. It means it's executing. So as we can see here, we have a shell. So if I do who am I, typically it's a www data. If I do an ls, apparently we're in root. So in pwd, we're in root. So now we can start to kind of move around, and we can find it. A bill is on the machine. We can go ahead and look at Bill's hash, and we can do all sorts of different things. So just kind of recap, we did an Nmap scan. We came up with all these different ports. We did research on each of the ports, and then we started to kind of figure out, okay, where are our exploits? We did a hidden file search, or not a hidden file search, but we did a directory search with GoBuster and Dirbuster to figure out what was available on the machine or on the target, and then we went from there in order to gain access. We used a reverse shell in this case. In this case, it was blocking access to PHP and PHP 5, but it was not blocking PHTML, so we were able to gain access there. So that's everything for Vulnversity. I'll make sure to upload it. I'll post this in the chat after we're done with the session, where I post the slides. But I did kind of give a general overview of kind of what steps we use in order to gain access to the target. So the second one that we're going to go through is called LazyAdmin. Most of these are going to be based on some sort of website. But the reason for that is going to be that that's going to be the thing that's most likely exposed. You could have some sort of API that's exposed, but that's just an entirely another beast of trying to do some API security hacking. So we're not going to go through that at all as part of this bootcamp, but at least we can show a little bit in terms of kind of how a red teamer would go through some of these websites. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start. In this case, I already have the answers here. So we're going to go ahead and let that spin up here. I'm going to go ahead and clean up a little bit in terms of this. So we'll go ahead and create a new directory here. So we're going to go into LazyAdmin. And we'll see a few different things here. I'll go ahead and get a new cherry tree ready to go. So in this case, LazyAdmin. We'll go ahead and call it the Nmap scan. So when that's ready to go, and we'll be all set when that IP address is revealed in about 25 seconds. And again, just very similarly, just like the other one, I do give out kind of the general solutions on how to keep going through here for this one as well. So hopefully we get that IP address just in about 10 seconds here. So I'll go ahead and prime my search here. So Nmap. We're going to do a ping. We're going to check the ping. We're going to skip the ping check. We're not going to check for a specific port here. We're just going to do the 1,000 most common. Sometimes these do take a little bit longer, so we'll see if this actually lets us get going here. So let's see. Okay, so we see port 22, which is SSH, and port 20, which is HTTP. So very similarly, we're going to have very similar result here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. So we're going to go ahead and copy and paste. And then in a second here, we'll get these services. So there we go. Port service scan. So go ahead and copy and paste. There we go. Fantastic. It's the same version number as we had before for the SSH. Okay, same version. So it's going to be the same. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and skip that one, just in an interest of time, and we've pretty much already done. So let's go ahead and head on out. So let's go ahead and head on out to that page. So we're going to go ahead and head on out, and we just have a default page. So that's not great. You as a web developer, you never want to just have this as your page. It's a little bit sloppy to leave it like this. You don't want to do that. But here we go. At least in this case, we do definitely need to use GoBuster because we have no knowledge of what is going on here. So we're going to go ahead and use the exact same command. We're going to modify the IP address here, and we're going to go ahead and let it go. So in this case, we see /content. So let's go ahead and head on out there to /content. And in this case, we have something called sweet rice. So that's curious. I wonder if, let's see. So let's see, sweet rice. I wonder if there's like a dashboard maybe. No, let's see. Let's see if there anything else has come. Nothing else has come back yet, so that's fine. But we've got /content. Maybe it's in like something like dashboard. Nope. Maybe there's like a login. But we just try things, let it while it's trying to figure things out. But here we have something called sweet rice. Basiccms.org. Welcome to Sweet Rice. So that's just led me out to a random site. So that's fine. We'll leave that alone. But we can go ahead and just look for some Sweet Rice vulnerabilities. So this is running. We'll let this run. We may have to update our GoBuster search to try and find something here, but we can, at the very least, in the meantime, do a search on that search exploit. So we'll do search exploit, Sweet Rice. So we'll go ahead and copy and paste. And we see a few things. So in this case, and it's curious because these are all website stuff. So we can say multiple vulnerabilities. So a whole bunch of stuff here. That could be curious. So first, I'm going to go to desktop, and I'm going to load LazyAdmin. So this could be curious. So that might be interesting. It's a file inclusion. There's a file download and a file upload. So that's very interesting to me. That could be something that could be useful. But let's go ahead and start with this one. Now we don't know a version number, so we have no idea if this is actually going to work. But it's something that while we're waiting for GoBuster to go through, it could be something that we might as well go ahead and try. Search exploit. In this case, -m, and we want the number here. So we want this guy. I'm going to go ahead and grab him, paste, and go ahead and open him up. And let's see. So we get some information here in terms of the value. So let's see. So vulnerability, and then this, like, as I said, this has multiple vulnerabilities, so that we may have to try a few different things. So here we go. In this case, it does not sanitize. So let's see. Ethical hacking. So we could go out to this website and see if we can figure out what the additional stuff is. So we can change the admin password. That's pretty dangerous. So that could be something that we may want to try here. We have a few other things. The vulnerability exists. Properly sanitize. Compromise the could do a few different things. So there's some sort of cross-site scripting vulnerability here. And then we can query the SQL database, and we can take a look at it. So maybe that's something that we may want to do. That looks a little more complicated than maybe what we may want to try here. So let's try a few different other ones. Let's look at this download one. So let's see here. So we're going to go ahead and copy this. So search exploit -m. Go ahead and paste that selection there. Go ahead and take a look at it. So 4069, or yep. So it's going to try, and here we go. We have a /as. So I'm curious if we go to content /as. Here we go. So we have some sort of website here. We have some sort of login page. We can try a few different things. Maybe we could try to get some sort of SQL injection to get in here. But it looks like we could try and log in here and get stuff. So here we go. So we want to download stuff from here. Let's see if we can just kind of glean some information here from here. So in this case, enter file to download. We may want to try and download some sort of PHP value. But in this case, there we go. We'll kind of save this for now. This could be useful for something else. So let's try one of the other ones. There's an easier one. Backup disclosure. So this could be interesting. So search exploit, Sweet Rice. So in this case, we want this text file. So we want 40.716. Oops, -m, I apologize. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I wanted this one. I wanted this text file. 4718. 4718. So if I were to go to inc/mysql_backup, we can actually get the backup to the file. So in this case, we're going to go ahead, and you do need the AS here. So in this case, let's copy this. We can try it through both. So let's see, inc/mysql backup. That's not quite right. So actually, we don't need the AS. Here we go. So as you can see here, I can actually download this MySQL backup files. This is some sort of file inclusion error where we can actually directly access the database or the database's backups. And if I double click on it here, and I just kind of look through it, if I had something like MySQL pulled up, I'd be able to kind of mess around with it and pull things out. But as you can see here, we have some form of description. We see admin, we see manager, we see welcome to Sweet Rice, and we see password. Now, most likely, this is some sort of hash. So if I go ahead and pull this out, and I do hash identifier, and I go ahead and paste this, it'll tell us what type of hash. In this case, it's an MD5 hash. We're going to go ahead and exit out, and I go ahead and do hashcat. I'm going to go ahead and use a dictionary attack. We know it's a, and actually I do need to throw this out into a hash. So in this case, echo. I'm going to go ahead and print this out. We're going to go ahead and use hashcat-a0-m0 hash.txt. Actually, we need the word list first. User share word lists /rocku. And let's see if this has the same error that we had before. I'm hoping it doesn't. Let's see. Okay, it looks like it's fixed it. Oh, it killed itself. Why did it kill itself? That's weird. Let's go ahead and use John the Ripper. Let's see, John. In this case, the format is, oh, it's crashing a little bit here. Let's see. Give it a sec. -- format. I think too many -- format equals raw MD5. I think that was right. Yeah, there we go. Word list equals user share word lists rocku. And then the hash.txt. So let's go ahead and do that. In this case, we see that the password is password123. So we go ahead and we keep going. We're going to go ahead and see if we can log in here, and then we see what we can do. So AS. We're going to go ahead and try manager. That seemed to pop out there as the user. It could be admin. And we get a login successful. So if we were to take a look at that Python script from before, so if we do an ls and we take a look at either, I want to say it was 1.6 or 1.7. Here we go. So if I look at this arbitrary file download and upload, we could try to use either of those as part of our attempt to get in. And we would, in this case, it's what's known as authenticated. So you need to have the username and password for these two. So that's why I skipped over those two. So as we can see here, we're here. And you can kind of go through and you can find some of the stuff. So if I were to reopen that file, so if I look up at that cat, I do ls cat 4060.698.py, we see that it's trying to go to some sort of, as we can see here, it goes as/signin, as/data mode import. So there's somewhere on here that we can import. So as if we look around, let's see if we can find it. Update, let's see. I wonder if it's in sitemap. Let's see. Media Center, maybe? And you can kind of, there we go. There we go. We have a Media Center. So what that Media Center can be used for, as you can see, we have some sort of file upload. So let's go ahead and see if we can get in with that HTML file. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do nc mdlp. We're using netcat listener. We use the same file as before, and let's see if it lets us in with that PHTML file. I could try it with the just the raw, or not the raw, but with the PHP file. Oh, that was the upload. We're actually going to go back to Vulnversity. We're going to use this PHTML file. We're going to see, oh, here we go. Fantastic. So it went ahead and it uploaded it. If it failed, we would have seen. And then if we go ahead and click on it, it's going to go ahead and try to open it. And as we can see, we have logged in. So we've made it. We are www.data. And there we go. So those are just two samples. I know that was just a general overview of kind of how to go through two machines. You're welcome to do additional reading on TryHackMe to kind of figure out more in terms of some of these tools and in terms of some of the procedures that I was following through. But at least that was just generally speaking how during a penetration test, we would go ahead and we would attack these two machines. We would do our scans. We would do research on what we were dealing with, and we would go through. So if some of this didn't really make a lot of sense, This just takes a little bit of time and practice to kind of start to get a little bit of the hang of the rhythm of in terms of how do you work through something, how do you attack it, how do you get in there, and how do you break in and stuff. So hopefully that was very insightful for you. And I'll go ahead and finish things out for today's session here. Tomorrow, we're going to go ahead and look at some firewalls. We're going to look at both from an external point of view. So we're going to do things at a network level, and then we're going to do things at a host level. So that's it for today. I'll let some questions, at least for the people who are here over Zoom. But at the very least from our folks from YouTube, thanks for checking in, and I will catch up with you guys in the next video.